What is sovereignty? What do we mean when we say that God is sovereign? Sovereignty simply means that God is powerful enough to accomplish His will. It means that His purposes can't be defeated. Now, we get that idea from repeated teachings within the Scriptures. Job 42:2 says, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Daniel speaks of God's sovereignty in all things physical and spiritual in the book of Daniel in 4:35 when he says, all the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the hosts of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? In Paul's letter to the Ephesians, the apostle helps us to see that we can be sure of our salvation because of God's work in His sovereignty, that He's working for the sake of His glory and for our good. In Ephesians 2:11, the apostle teaches, in Him we have obtained an inheritance. We have been predestined according to the purpose of Him who works all things according to the counsel of His will, so that we, who were the first to hope in Christ, might be to the praise of His glory. Now, when I think of God's sovereignty, I am comforted, especially in those times of trouble when I'm not sure what to do. It says in Proverbs 16:33 that the lot or dice are cast in the lap, but every decision is from the Lord. And so I know that even in situations that seem to come out of nowhere, I can trust that I'm not experiencing some random thing. I'm experiencing God at work. God is working all things together, even difficult things, for my good. And He has His hand on me, working for His purpose in my life and for His glory, that I become more and more like Christ, because I've been called according to His purpose. Ultimately, that I would be like Christ and I would glorify His name. Many non-believers use the existence of suffering in the world as an excuse to not believe in God. They'll say that if God can do all things, then why is there so much hurt and so much suffering? Now, I usually answer this kind of statement in a couple of ways. First of all, I say, well, God can't do just anything, but He can only do those things which are consistent with His holy will and His good character. God cannot lie, for example, because He's truthful. God can do no wrong and He cannot sin. He never tempts people because He is holy and good and just. Secondly, I say that since God is holy, just, and wise, that He's working things for His own glory and for our good, we can trust in Him in times of suffering because we're His children, knowing that He is for us and knows the outcome in the end. As Joseph said to his brothers who had sold him into slavery, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Today we'll look at what King David has to say about this question. Can God be both sovereign and caring if He allows us to suffer? From what we read in Psalm 69, it sure seems that David would say, yes, God is both sovereign and good. In Psalm 69, he calls on God for deliverance from bitter oppression. He is consumed with zeal for God's house, verse 9. And he praises God, who, even in the midst of pain, oppression, and slander, hears the needy and does not despise His own people who are prisoners, verse 33. We will look at specifically Psalm 69:13, where we'll see how faith in God, who cares for His people, and sovereignty come together even when we are in times of trial or trouble. Today, as we study Psalm 69:13, we want to answer the question, how should God's sovereignty shape our faith?